So where are we at with Fable?
Welcome back to the channel. I'm Hey Vintage. Thank you very much for joining me on a breakdown of the Xbox Fable announcement and pre-alpha footage that we saw on the podcast. There seems to be a little bit less to go over in this announcement compared to the trailers, but that's kind of the nature of pre-alpha footage versus like curated trailers. The big highlight, of course, is it's delayed until 2026. There's some key callouts at the start of the video, but they're a little bit mixed in with the usual kind of corporate platitudes. The highlights are the game has been pushed to 2026. While personally, I was optimistic that it was going to be released this year. A lot of fans kind of saw this coming. A lot of the chatter was that there's no way it's coming this year. And they were right. Craig Duncan says he's really confident in Playground's ability to make an amazing Fable game. They reference Playground's awards for the Forza games, which makes sense. After all, Fable is my favorite racing game series of all time. If you'll excuse me being completely facetious, Playground do actually look like they're doing an amazing job. I just can't stop imagining Fable horse racing with horse drifting and the works. It'd be absolutely amazing. But anyway, let's move on and look at the pre-alpha clips, because they're the interesting bit of it. We start out with an absolutely gorgeous view of Fairfax Castle from what looks like it could be Bower Lake, which was later renamed Millfields, if you're more familiar with Fable 3. We don't stay here for very long, and we have seen these kind of gorgeous visuals quite a lot already from Playground games. I actually think this is probably one of the scenes that was used in a previous trailer that we're now seeing as like pre-alpha footage. The next scene we see is probably Old Town or Bowerstone Market in the nighttime. I did briefly consider it being somewhere like Westcliff, but after looking at kind of still frames, it really does look like you can see the spires of Fairfax Castle in the top of the clouds, just over the rooftops here. I spent a little bit too much time trying to look at this person sat down in the foreground because I thought they were sitting in front of some kind of like shop stall. Or if you remember playing through Fable 2, if in the prologue, if you give the warrants to the criminal instead of to the guard, you end up with the bad rundown version of Old Town, and there's like huts everywhere and little fires in the street and things. And I was wondering if maybe this kind of reflected that kind of decision making. There's a man in the background here who on my first two watches I thought was like kicking a stone against the wall for entertainment. After going back and re-watching a few times, he's definitely not kicking a stone. He's definitely kicking something very heavy, which looks like it could well be a body. So yeah, maybe Bowerstone isn't quite as safe a place at night as it has been in the previous games. The beautiful Oakvale aesthetic. It really is gorgeous. Like, this is one of my favorite kind of areas in Fable games. It's next to Bowerstone. It's kind of what I think about when I think about that Fable aesthetic, that kind of like thatch roof. It looks almost like the Sangoose. Again, another Fable 2 location. Might be cottoning on to the fact that I really like Fable 2 out of the series, but it really does look similar to the Sangoose. It's that kind of thatched roof pub with seating outside. There's a couple of stalls next to it, chickens milling about the place. There is a sign on the right-hand side here. I can't quite make out what it is. It looks like it could be some kind of pig, maybe, but that kind of makes me think that it probably isn't a location that we've been to before. It's probably not the Sangoose. It's not the Cock in the Crown. It's not the Cow and Corset. It's probably going to be a new location. This next shot is a really similar perspective of Bowerstone to the previous trailer. The only thing of real note is the notice board on the left over here. I can't remember if we've seen it before, and I'm wondering if it's going to be a method of selecting side quests or jobs, or maybe just in-game news. One thing I will say is if you kind of click and zoom in, it does say, like the video. It does make me feel dirty saying things like that. I really love this thing that Playground games have been doing with their trailers, where they have the match cuts as we go through, like as she's walking through Bowerstone, she is kind of frame perfect into the next shot. We see as well the horse, which just makes me think of, this is going to age me seriously, but if you're a fan of the Fable series, you're probably about my age. Does everybody remember Weeble stuffs? The look at my horse is amazing. Everybody remember that? Probably not. Maybe a niche bit of internet history there, but anyway, that's what went off in my brain when I saw this. We get a lovely shot of them kind of passing through Bluebell Forest. I'm constantly in awe of how nice everything looks in the trailers, and then this being pre-alpha footage. I am trying to contain and restrain my excitement because I remember with like Cyberpunk's pre-alpha footage, they were talking about their like crowd technology, and they had all these people on the street walking around, and it was so busy, and the city was so like lifelike and so alive. And then it turned out that they were running that pre-alpha footage on some absolute monster of a PC that was probably more like some huge server running the game. And then when it came out on release, you got like 2 or 3 people milling about, and it was a very different visual and experience. So I'm very conscious that although it says pre-alpha footage, you can't quite go, oh, this is what it's going to look like when it runs on my machine or when it runs on my Xbox. I am absolutely okay with being proven wrong and excited to be proven wrong. We'll just have to kind of see what it looks like. I guess you can look at the quality and the visuals that you get in the Forza games and go, no, they actually do produce that kind of visual fidelity, but we'll wait and see. Coming back to the horse for a minute, it will actually be really interesting to see if this is just like a transportation and maybe storage mechanic, or if it's going to be like a full in-depth equine companion system. My personal choice would actually be the former of the two. Horses are great and all, but I don't want to spend half my game time like brushing down my horse to stop the villagers complaining about how dirty my horse is. Although that is also the kind of NPC talk that brings the Fable games to life. I just remember playing Red Dead Redemption 2 and getting a little bit fed up with how much care and attention I had to put into the horse, because I was like, I'm not a horse guy, sorry. That does bring me to a secondary point, is that now that we've kind of seen an animal companion, we haven't seen any mention or hint of a canine companion. We haven't seen the dog. We haven't seen any hint that there's going to be a dog or any other pet alternatively, other than maybe the horse. Horse doesn't really feel quite the same to me. I really enjoyed in Fable 2 and 3 chasing the dog around to like find dig spots and it pointing out silver keys that I'd missed or chests that were nearby, growling when enemies were nearby before they attacked to give you that little hint that something was about to go wrong. I really like the canine companion. I think to me, it's an integral part of the Fable series. If it's not in the new Fable, I'm not going to go around claiming that it's not a Fable game. But I know that this is actually quite a divisive topic. I'm really interested to hear what you guys think. So if you have an opinion one way or the other about there being like a dog or maybe a cat this time, or a little hob that follows you around instead, or just some kind of companion, like post it in the comments, because I want to see what everybody's opinions are, because I always thought everybody loves the dog because the dog is amazing. And then I spent a lot of time on the Reddit and I found out that actually not everybody likes the dog. A lot of people think it's a bit superfluous and a bit annoying. It is annoying at times, but yeah, I want to know what you think, so let me know. This next shot takes place in the same location that we saw the hero fight the bandits in one of the previous trailers, where the hero hits the bandit in the head with what's called a Mordhau strike, where they hit with the pommel of the sword while holding the blade in the palms. I have actually seen a lot of discourse about this on some of the other YouTube channels that are covering Fable content. One, it is a real thing. People did used to do it primarily against armored targets. And 2, it doesn't actually cut your hands anywhere near as much as you would think. If you are interested in proof of that, you can go and check out Sellsword Arts did a video on taking an actually sharp blade and using the Mordhau strike and seeing if it cuts his hand. And it did cut his hand a teeny tiny bit. I will agree with Mogo's Beard that it wasn't necessary in this situation, but it was cool, so I'll take it. But this area here, I always wonder if this is Hero Hill, and I don't know why. I think it's just me going, that's on a hill, that's a thing on a hill, that's got to be Hero Hill. It might be, it might not be. We'll find out in game. I really want to know what that structure is on top. I'm just desperate to explore this world, really. Okay, the next shot, we see the hero walking up to a cave with like a wooden door on the front. This gave me flashbacks to Echo Mine in Fable 2. One of the quests that you can pick up after coming back from the Spire is from Tommy, who I think he says that Hobbs have invaded his cave and he wants you to go in and sort them out. Tommy, by the way, is wearing a dress with melons shoved down the front, a wig, and drastic makeup would be one way to put it. Something is off. And then when you go to the cave, it is full of Hobbs. But it turns out Tommy thinks he is a Hob and has been growing up with Hobbs. And seeing this like entrance, it's very similar to the entrance to the Echo Mine in Oakfield. And it really reminded me of that quest. I don't think it is anything to do with that. I think it's probably more likely to be the entrance to the area where we see the Balverine quest taking place in some of the later scenes in this pre-alpha footage. That kind of makes the most sense thematically. There's a joke here that I can't resist making. Nice cock. I'm wondering if this giant chicken could maybe be part of the Jack and the Beanstalk inspired quest that we saw in the very first Fable trailer. Richard Ayoade's character was making giant vegetables and could well be making giant fowl as well. Who knows? Another couple of possibilities that I kind of thought through were things like CD Projekt Red's Bovine Defense Initiative, which was a patch that came out for The Witcher 3, and it punished players for farming cow hides in one of the early villages to get unlimited crowns. What you would do is you would kill all the cows, skin all the hides, sit and meditate for, I think it was like 8 hours or something, and that would cause all the cows to respawn. You could kill them again, and then you could sell all these hides and just get unlimited crowns and completely ruin the early game experience because you just have so much money. They introduced like a Minotaur style enemy that would come and basically it would spawn in and murder you because it was way above the level that you would be when doing this. It was a really interesting way to deal with that problem. I really liked the approach. I'm wondering if this could be something similar to you. If you kicked enough chickens, does this guy just turn up Legend of Zelda style, like you've attacked and hurt a chicken? So here's a giant one that's going to mess you up. I'm down for anything, to be honest. I think the first idea is probably most likely, but we'll wait and see. Also, this probably takes place in that kind of Oakfield style area that we saw earlier, and that's very similar to the areas that we saw Richard Ayoade's character in the first trailer. So I think that kind of lines up quite nicely. Okay, we got a really good look at some Hobbs in this scene. But the first thing I want to talk about is the hammer. The hero is wielding a hammer. So far, we've seen them wield a sword, a bow, and a hammer. And I had like immediate flashbacks to Fable 3's sword, hammer, gun, rifle. I was like, oh, please don't be super limited to the type of weapons. I don't think a modern game is going to be limited in that way. I don't think that's realistic. I also thought that this hammer was like all made of stone, and at one point it looked a little bit like it had like a metal shine to it, but I think it's actually just the wraps that have been put around it to hold the big heavy stone on the end of the haft. So it looks nice. The animation's cool. She has one dodgy frame in here, which I'm not pointing out as a criticism. It just really made me laugh when she does the pirouette. One of her legs locks out and she looks kind of like a rigid doll in like almost like a T-pose. But these are all the things that get ironed out. I will say these Hobbs are like adorably disgusting. I absolutely love Hobbs as a creature. I think they're really inventive and cool. They have a really sinister like origin, being children that were led away into the dark and turned into Hobbs. Again, Fable 2 has a quest where you witness that happen, which is really grim, but they have a really cool kind of lore behind them, and I want to get more of that. My one disappointment is that we haven't seen any wearing pots and pans for armor or like backwards trousers. We don't know if there's going to be magic casting Hobbs like there were in the previous games, but all of that's going to come later. I'm excited for it. Okay, then we cut to this very tall bandit. He's so tall. He's like half a foot taller than the hero. Also, he's wielding an axe. Thinking about the kind of different weapons that we've seen in the game, actually, we've seen Humphrey wielding a masterwork mace. We've seen the potential villain of the story wielding what I think is maybe a scythe or like a mage staff. There's not a whole lot to go off of, but in the portrait that we saw at the beginning of the previous trailer, you can see she's kind of holding it against her body, and it's not the way that you would hold a really big heavy mace. Another little kind of pre-alpha rough around the edgesness. here that tickled me a little bit is the bandit completely finishes his swing through the hero and then snaps back to where she blocked. Again, not a criticism, just made me chuckle. Okay, now we really get into the meat of the pre-alpha footage. This is kind of the best bit. How good does this Balverine look? We saw a Balverine in the first trailer and it really kind of concerned me. Like, there wasn't anything else in that trailer that made me go, oh no. It was just the Balverine they showed looked too much like a generic werewolf. Like, it just looked like that big, bulky, husky werewolf that you see in a lot of other media, like that Van Helsing style muscle guy. And I'm really pleased to see that it doesn't actually look like that. It could even be that it's the same model, just in a different pose, in different lighting, and you can see it better, and I was just mistaken as to what it looked like. Either way, this thing looks absolutely amazing. It also made me realize that this Balverine's in daylight. I always assumed that Balverines had the same, like, coming out on a full moon thing that traditional werewolves have. Just mostly based on the previous games, like all the zones you encounter them in, it's always nighttime. Like, those zones are perpetually nighttime. And then in Fable 3, I think if you're in like Millfields, which is one of the first areas that you can encounter a Balverine, they only spawn if you're there at night. They don't spawn during the day. Hey there, guys. Editing Vintage here. Just wanted to quickly say that I have no idea why I forgot about the existence of Silver Pines. I forgot it earlier when we were talking about it. I keep talking about Millfields, which does have Balverines, and there is that whole Balverine quest line with Reaver in Millfields in Fable 3, but Silver Pines is just packed to the brim with Balverines, and I just completely forgot. So please forgive me for that one. But yeah, Silver Pines is the real Balverine area in Fable 3. Anyway, back to the video, guys. Bye. That prompted me to go to the wiki and do a little bit of reading. And because there was a Fable book called The Balverine Order, which has mixed reviews, I've not read it yet myself, but there's a lot of lore and history behind Balverines. The main interesting bit, I guess, that I kind of picked out of there that relates to this is that higher Balverines can change form at will and are capable of human speech, which is kind of terrifying because they could do that thing where they're in the woods and they call your name and you go out in search of who's shouting for you, and it's a 9-foot tall Balverine. I'm tempted to maybe do a little bit more in-depth video on Balverines as we get closer to the launch, because they are really interesting. They have like a whole society and things. It's really cool. We also get to see the hero here throwing a fireball. We saw the hero throw a fireball in a previous trailer. I think it was in the first one. Nobody wants a ball of fire thrown at them, but compared to this one, it was a very small ball of fire. If you use that bit of information to kind of read into what type of magic system we might be getting in the new game, it kind of hints that we're less likely to get that Fable 2, Fable 3 style of charging up through multiple levels of a spell to cast a higher level, and more like that Fable 1 Lost Chapters Anniversary, however you want to refer to it, their kind of magic system where you level up the spell through what's probably going to be some kind of skill tree, and then you can just instantly cast it at higher levels and do more damage. I think both systems have merits. I want to play, honestly, more with the Fable 1 style, with the modern approach taken to it. I think it's going to be really fun to do. The other thing we get to see here is that this massive fireball just absolutely wrecks that Balverine. It completely knocks him over, and that's really satisfying to see. Okay, after a little bit more chat from Craig Duncan, we cut back to the hero and one of the characters that we saw from the previous trailer setting up a bear/Balverine trap. I'm really amazed at how beautiful all the mundane things in these trailers look. Like, that is a bear trap, but it really looks like a lovingly forged piece of deadly art. Like, it looks really good. And the sausages they put on top of it don't look too bad either. This is the bit where we get to do some real kind of theory crafting. This is the same man that we saw in the previous trailer. As YouTuber Murgo's Beard spotted, it looks like he had an encounter with a Balverine in a cave. We're in a cave, it's the same man. As we get a close-up of the hero's face as she stands up, it really looks like she's got like bloodshot eyes and like a slightly vacant stare. Again, it could be because it's pre-alpha footage, but I don't think it's like a lack of emotion or unrefined animation that we're seeing. I think it's more of like a sorrowful look of resolve. Like she doesn't want to do what she's about to do. My initial theory around this was that the man that was helping her set up the bear trap, or the Balverine trap, was the Balverine that they were hunting, and they both knew that, and that's why they didn't look too happy about the situation. But as I saw when I was going through the footage, like with still frames, you can see him behind her locking a cage door, so I'm probably wrong on that front. My new theory is that the Balverine is somebody that he kind of loves or cares for, and he's been using this prison cell in a cave to contain them when they turn, but for whatever reason that's not working anymore, or it's not possible anymore, so they've recruited the hero to put the Balverine out of its misery. I think it also lends a little bit more weight to the shot of the hero looking at this man in a town, like in a city or town or city setting in the previous trailer, and I think there's like screaming in the background or shouting. I'm wondering if maybe they'd been managing this Balverine's condition, this person's condition turning into a Balverine, and then it went wrong, they escaped, they killed a load of people, and so the hero has essentially been dispatched to be like, you can't keep doing this, we have to kill the Balverine, that kind of thing. I'm really keen to play through the quest, I want to know what's going on, I think it's going to be a really good one. The Balverine quest in the Fable games, some of the more iconic quests, we have like the white Balverine from the first game. In the second game, there is Lilith, who meets you on the way to Westcliff. Lilith being a bit of a giveaway name, because Lilith is the name of the queen of demons in like Christianity, I believe. But yeah, then she turns out to be the mother. I don't know if she's literally the mother of all of the Balverines that attack you. And then you get white Balverines that attack you in the Crucible later. Fable 3 has Millfield, which it turns out all the aristocracy there are Balverines, who knew, and Reaver's been using them for like party games and things. So there's a really long kind of rich Fable history to Balverines. There's also one other thing I can't unsee. These look so much like the monsters from Scooby-Doo Spooky Island. If you haven't seen it, it's a fun film. But somebody needs to warn Scooby-Doo that they're loose and they're not weak to sunlight anymore. Yeah, go check out Scooby-Doo the movie. It's great. Okay, after this kind of combat footage, Tina Amini, apologies if I got the name wrong, makes a comment here about the seamless transition from cinematic to gameplay. And all I can think about is that meme of Mr. Bean riding the escalator for the first time and not knowing that he has to get off at the top. Thankfully, there is a visual clue here, the hero drawing her sword, but I will probably get whacked once or twice by that Balverine before I realise I'm in control of the character again. Yeah, that's going to be a fun one. In this kind of quick fight scene, we've got more blocking, dodging, and sidestepping. It looks a little bit crude, but it's pre-alpha footage. I think it's going to be phenomenal when it releases. I'm sure they will have, but I really hope the controls have evolved significantly since Fable 2 and 3. More than anything, I want a dedicated block button. Having to hold the melee attack button to block was really clunky. I think games and controllers have come along plenty now that will have a much more intuitive control scheme, but that was just something that I couldn't let go when I was writing this script. Craig here says, I've seen a bunch more than that. I'm like, tell us, Craig, spill the beans. I want to know. He then goes on to say that there's no bigger fans of the Fable franchise than the developers, which kind of sounds like a challenge. And if you've been in the subreddit, you can see the audience is frothing at the mouth for little scraps of news. Like a post exploded on there the other week because somebody works in a pub near the studio and had noticed more staff coming in, and the theory crafting was just absolutely off the chain. There were people arguing that the game was really close to release and they were all drinking to celebrate, and people arguing that the game had been delayed, so they were all drinking to commiserate, and there were people saying the game's been cancelled, so they were all drinking, like they're all drowning their sorrows in the local pub. And it's like, maybe the second one was right, maybe it wasn't, maybe people just went to the pub after work. Craig also talks about what are the tenets of Fable, and that's a huge question. If you watch any of my streams or my Let's Plays, you'll know I spend a fair amount of time on the Fable subreddit. I used to think that I knew what a Fable game was and that I could kind of define that and say, this is a Fable game. And the truth is, like, it is so many different things to so many different people that the balance is going to be off for some people regardless. We're going to get mixed reviews immediately. Some people are going to be devastated that it's missing this. Some people are going to be angry that it's had this added, all that kind of stuff. If you go too hard in the Lost Chapter style, you might put off somebody that prefers Fable 3. And those people do exist. There are dozens of them. Striking a balance is going to be really difficult, if not impossible. Personally, I'm just happy to have more Fable in my life, and Playground Games' version of Fable looks to be shaping up phenomenally. To go from assuming I was never going to get to play a Fable game ever again, other than the ones that were released, to something that looks this good and is having this much care and attention put into it, is huge. I'm really excited, which is why I'm making videos, and I'm hoping you guys are enjoying it. But that does unfortunately do it for the new footage. I really hope you enjoyed my breakdown of what we saw. I'm sure there's going to be tons of stuff that I've missed. If there's things that you've spotted, again, put them in the comments, because I'll read through the comments and then I can have a look and see what I missed. I want to know. There'll be other YouTubers that are covering this. I mentioned Murgo's Beard because he has been doing some really detailed breakdowns. Like, I think at one point he was comparing the window frames to window frames in another area, like in a different screenshot that could be another area of Albion. And I was like, that never would have even occurred to me. So yeah, definitely check out the other creators in the space and see kind of what they're posting, because I think there's a real opportunity to get some really good Fable content going. If you are stuck for Fable content, please do check out my Fable 2 playthrough here on YouTube. Feel free to join the Discord. That'll be in the link below as well. It'd be really helpful to the channel if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, look after yourselves. Bye for now. Kick that chicken. Kick it.